Very good morning, everyone, and a warm welcome to our HATS Hospitality and Tourism Skills Recovery. This is SRC, Southern Regional College's third event, and this morning we're going to talk about podcasting. We're going to talk about how to get into podcasting, and my name is Kieran Swale. I'm a Tourism Innovation Specialist, and I'm ably assisted today by, I have to just check my team because we have Aisling, Amy, we have Margaret, we have Sarah and Brian. So we have a good representation of Southern Regional College. Delighted to be talking about a passion of mine, really, podcasting. And as we go through this morning, I will hopefully be sharing that with you. And I like to think inspiring you to start the journey, because it isn't that difficult, and if I can do it, anyone can do it. Okay, just a few housekeeping rules and rules of engagement. Really, you will automatically have been muted when you come on to this morning. Secondly, this presentation will be saved and will be shared with all of today's participants, and the notes from this will go along, and the links will go along with the presentation as well. As a follow-up, if you have any questions about podcasting, I'd be very welcome to send me an email at swalek@src.ac.uk, and we will try and respond to them. But I suppose, looking at the sector and what's been happening, it's great that we have these workshops. As I say, this is our third and last. And in terms of tourism recovery, isn't it great that we're back opening from the hospitality sector, and in tourism that we're able to welcome guests, and on the domestic front in Northern Ireland and across Ireland. I hope it'll be a good summer this year. Okay, enough of that's our rules of engagement, and let's get started. So this is our first steps to creating our own podcast. In today's session, my own background, I got into podcasting probably about 4 years ago, but then that lasted for, I would say about a couple of months, and I used Audacity, and I did produce some podcasts, but like everything else, you have to keep at it. So I just rested on my laurels, and I picked it up again about 12 months ago. I was really ably assisted by two people. Wayne Denner, if you don't know Wayne, get to know him. Great guy, has a friend. I actually taught Wayne a long time ago, but he's big into online reputation. And I met Wayne, and he says, Ken, you should get back into your podcast. And so he gave me a bit of help to do that. And then more recently, a colleague and a friend, Cathal McDonald, helped me on the electronic side of things to put things together on a website and encouraged me to do podcasting. And I really, really enjoy it. And with podcasting, you find, this is going to sound funny, you kind of find yourself. You find your own identity, you find your own personality. And I've been able to do that. And I've had great fun in recording the podcast and interviewing my guests. So my own background, I've been back at Southern Regional College. When I say back, I used to be here a long time ago as a lecturer in travel and tourism. But from 2012, I've been with the business support team and working as a tourism innovation specialist. I help a number of businesses, and Margaret will be coming on the end and tell you how we can help. I'm going to talk today then about podcasting on the go. Podcasting from your home or work office. This is my home work office setup at the moment. What you see, it's a very, very simple setup, and I'll talk about that later. This is my own roadmap. So I put it together 6 steps that I'm going to show you. I'm also going to talk about the last 5th step. There is very important. Yes, it's good to create a podcast, but the success will be in its promotion and distribution. And there's lots of good resources that are free and some are paid for that I'll talk about. TMV is my own podcast, Tomorrow's Visitors. And then I just briefly make reference to a podcast I created with one of my clients, Travel with Brack Tours. And they're now on to their 9th podcast. All right, so whilst these stats in front of you are I suppose, slightly dated, I mean, podcasting continues to grow at a phenomenal rate. And the last, I suppose, 15 months, with the way the world has changed, a lot of people have been turning to podcasting for a number of reasons. You'll see this in the next slide, and then I'm going to ask my colleagues to share their views on podcasting as well. But 3 out of every 4 podcast listeners, this is an American stat from a year or 2 ago, say they tune in to learn new things. There's probably a higher figure than that there of active podcasts at the moment across the world. So, podcasting is definitely on the up. If it's something you're thinking about in your tourism business, my recommendation is to get in now. And you're still timely. It's still early enough. You're still being early enough adopter if you get into podcasting. Creating an audio file on its own isn't enough. You have to think of the integrated strategy and integrated marketing. And this is where the promotion and distribution become really, really important. And after these slides and my colleague Margaret talks, then I'm going to show you a WordPress site that I've created with Cahill's help. And it works very, very well for me, but it took me a while to do that. So, podcasting just doesn't happen overnight. You need to think of a strategy towards it. So why do people listen to podcasts then? Well, there's two things I like to highlight. On the left is education, on the right is entertainment. And I haven't coined this, but I use the term edutainment. So for education and entertainment. And I found certainly in my own case, that's what's happened in the last couple of years. I've highlighted a couple of things. The retention rate of auditory learning is 2 times higher than reading, 4 times higher than attending a lecture. So I'm sorry if I offended any lecturers here today. But, I even, both my sons have started to get into podcasts and listening, and that new generation is listening. We're all being more conditioned to listen to things. Audio is one of the most intimate forms of media. And on the podcast that I listen to, and I'll share them with you shortly, I really feel that you get to know the creator of the podcast in a personal way. And unless you experience this, it's very hard for me to share that with you. So you talk about knowing the author of a book or a poet when they read something to you, but a podcaster, you feel like you're building that one-to-one relationship. So it's very intimate, and that's the difference than a mass television show or any other mass type of media. So in terms of what I've been listening, this is only some. Anybody that knows me will know I'm a keen cyclist, so I listen to that MTB Tribe one. I love this one here, the cycling podcast, and for cycling fans, we just recently finished the Giro there, so I was listening to this podcast every day, and it was great. What's interesting about this show is they have 3 hosts on the cycling podcast. Normally you would only have 1, sometimes 2. To have 3 is very, very tricky, but they have a lot of sponsorship behind that. The technology one I listen to on Tangle from time to time. I love the Best of Belfast one. I'm originally from Carryduff, and I'm back living in Carryduff, so I really, really enjoy that. Digital tourism show is always interesting. On the football perspective, I am the current Champions League supporter, way back from 1970s. But so the Peter Crouch podcast is he's not a Chelsea fan, by the way. But Peter Crouch podcast is a great laugh. It's more than football. It's great crack. The Skip podcast is very much a travel one. And then my good friend Wayne Denner has a great podcast there on 0 Lives Left. So it's at this stage that my colleague Sarah and Brian is going to come in and chat just for a minute or two as well. But Sarah, I'm going to hand over to you if you want to jump in. Sarah, tell us a little bit about, we have some podcasts here of what podcasting means to you, and give us some indication of the stuff that you're listening to, please.
Well, initially, my podcast journey started whenever I was always an avid reader, and then just, when life starts to get in the way, you just don't have the time to read like you used to. So whenever I had kids during the early days with the night feeds and things, it was good to plug in one earbud, listen to a story in the middle of the night during the feeds and not disturbing anybody else in the house. These days I tend to listen when I'm doing the commute or lunchtime walk, or maybe when I'm ironing or hoovering about the house, just to get the stories into your head while you're concentrating on something else. And as you can see from some of the selection I've chosen for the slides there, they can be a bit of a random selection, especially in the last year. Maybe it's moved to a wee bit less newsy, a bit more escapism to try and take you into stories. And just to try and escape the world that we're in at the minute, just to go off for a half hour into your phone and listen to a story. about anything at all. You have short stories, you can have serialized stories or anything. Desert Island Discs is one just that's really good for that. It just takes you off into somebody else's world, and can be just.
What's that side hustle one? What's that about?
Side hustle. I think that was when I was dreaming of maybe what I could do with what I thought I had some spare time.
Right.
If you work full time, it's a way of encouraging you to maybe try and start a wee job on the side, just something to get a wee bit of extra cash in for people who work full time as well. It's not something to start a career at or anything. It was just to try and earn a few extra pounds, maybe from a hobby or something.
Yes.
But it's
And conversations of inspiration. What's that about?
So the Conversations of Inspiration is from the lady who'd started Not on the High Street, and it tends to be more women entrepreneur focused. She talks through the rough and ready startups, you know, from your highlights of being self-employed to, you know, the opposite effect. I think that anybody who's been self-employed knows that it's a roller coaster. So they talk through the ups and downs of it and give experience and advice for other people who are maybe stepping into.
Yeah, I picked that one out, sir, because I love that. I mean, inspiration. We all now today receive. Sometimes we don't know where we heard something or saw something, but we get inspired. And it's the podcasts, and you rightly said, on the walk or while you're doing something, and maybe it's domestic chore or you're out in a leisure activity, but you're listening to something or in the car, and there's something that triggers. The mind never stops, you know, whether it's a commute on a bus or on a train or you're driving, the mind is constantly, you know, while you're working. So being able to listen to something and be inspired by that is powerful. Sarah, that's given us a great flavour of what you listen to, and thanks for telling us why you listen to it. I know we could probably spend the morning talking about this, but I may not be. The hats creators may not be happy with us. But
that's the thing. There is a podcast for absolutely every topic. So yes, you could spend forever talking about them. So whatever your interest is, you'll find a topic for it.
You will. Listen, thank you very much for that, Sarah. I really, really appreciate it. I'll go very, very quickly, Brian. I'm sorry I haven't a slide up for you, but if I could bring you in, my colleague, thanks, Sarah. If I could bring in my colleague, Brian, just for a minute, Brian, if you don't mind. It's just nice to have another voice. So we heard there from Sarah, we've heard from me, but in terms of podcasting, Brian, what do you listen to and why would you listen to podcasts? If you're able to jump in there, Brian.
Sure, Kieran. Well, I'm not a very faithful podcast listener because mostly I listen with them in the car, and that can be complicated to do. So, but the ones that I would tend to listen to are more sort of sciencey. You know, More or Less is one that's from Radio 4. It's all about numbers, and I have an unhealthy fascination with numbers. And another one that we've started to listen to over the last few while is All in the Mind, which is my wife's counselor, and it's all about psychology and psychotherapeutic stuff, and it's quite interesting. Claudia Hammond.
Yeah.
Again, also from Radio 4. One that my daughter has got me into recently is called Murder Makeup Monday,
Right.
and it's all about classic murders and unsolved murders in some cases, and while this woman does her makeup on camera or just on, you know, in audio, so it's interesting. She has an interesting way about her, and she tells a story in a very engaging way, which I find is very important for a podcast.
She's actually putting her makeup on, right?
She does a new makeup look for each one, and while she's doing the makeup, she's actually telling the story. It's as if you're actually having a conversation with someone while they're just getting ready to go out. It's a brilliant way of doing it.
Okay,
and it gives also quite a nice timing to it as well.
I'm not sure about the makeup, but I'm really intrigued about that one. Really am. Okay.
So never mind the makeup, but check it out. It's quite good. And I do like. I will pick up pretty much any others. TED Talks one. I have a TED Recommends podcast, which I listen to from time to time, and they'll point you at other podcasts, which is then it becomes a never-ending rabbit hole down which you can fall.
What I might do, Brian, what I might ask for, and maybe if Margaret's in touch with all the participants from who are all our listeners today, and maybe what I could ask you to do is to just give us a little list of what you listen to, and we'll add that with the resources that we're sharing from today. Brian, thanks very much for coming on and sharing that. And to Brian and Sarah now and myself, hopefully you've been able to get a flavour of some of the staff. I'd love to ask all the rest of the staff, but as we say, we could be here for a while. Okay, so on to then some actions. I put this together because I thought back in the last year, you know, when I was starting my own podcast. So I've kind of done this, I suppose it's like a Google Colors, but really just to, if we go from on a clockwise direction. And the biggest thing I think you have to ask yourself is, you're starting your own podcast. Seriously, why are you doing it? And I've highlighted there very roughly. You've got to ask yourself, why are you doing it? And if you're thinking, well, I'm doing it because I want to, I have a desire to, I've always wanted to find my own voice. You know, that's a good starting point. You've then got to seriously asking, who is it for? Who are my audience? Who's it for? Remember, podcasting, you've just listened to Brian and Sarah's and my own. Podcasting's niche. It's specialist. It's not a broad platform. It's very, very, you know, it's more single-minded, in particular, think of tunnel vision there. So it's a niche audience. So who's it for and why should they listen? And then you're on to, well, what are you going to call this podcast? What's the name? And I say there, always think relevancy. You heard some of the podcasts that were obvious. And then I was asking Sarah, what's that about? So the name has to either catch, or you've got to think of the relevancy of it. Both for, sorry, I put the acronyms in there, SEO and SEM. That's search engine optimization and search engine marketing. I'll continue to plug my own, which is tomorrow's visitor. So even in the name, that's very, you know, it's about what are tomorrow's visitors to Ireland, North and South. What are they looking for? So think a lot about your name. How long is your podcast going to be? You know, is it going to be 20 minutes per show? Is it going to be 30 minutes? Is it going to be 45 minutes? Is it going to be an hour? And what kind of format? How often are you going to do it? How often are you going to do it? Every week? You're going to do it every fortnight? Or are you going to do it once a month or less than that? And what's the format? Now, back in the slide when I talked about the cycling podcast, there were 3 hosts. Now, that's really, really difficult. In my own podcasts, I go for a dialogue. So I'm usually interviewing one person at a time. Or if I'm on site and I use a little, maybe either a clip mic or a little device called a task cam, which is, I don't have a task cam with me at the moment, but it's about that size there. And I could plug in 2 or 3 mics to that if I wanted to on site. So trying to, with 2 hosts, to arrange that in a home office situation can be quite difficult unless you're in a recording studio. And this workshop this morning isn't about that. You know, this is about getting you up and running on the go and starting off. So the format, monologue does work. And some of the ones, you know, monologue is just one person talking. I know I couldn't do that. Some of my colleagues maybe could, but you need to be really very, very skilled. And I suppose if you're a DJ or a radio host, then you could do that all the time. But, you know, your own radio show. So, you know, unless you're a skilled professional presenter, it's quite difficult to have a monologue. So I think by and large you'd be going for the dialogue. And coming into the format there, I put news in because you might want to have a little section where you interview one person, and that takes 20 minutes, 25 minutes. But then you might have a news update. And then you'll see when I come to the format, you could, you know, there'll be a jingle for your news, and then you say, well, this month's travel news is bum, 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 bum. And that's going to be a feature of all of your podcasts. And obviously the format, whatever music you decide, and we could have a show, we could have a webinar on music alone and on the types of music and where you go for your music. And that's, I'm happy to take questions on that or on a follow-up email inquiry. But music is going to set the tone for what you decide to go for. You know, in terms of the music, you've got story blocks, you've got audio jungle, you've got premium beat, which are all subscribers but do free play music, which you've got to just see if they are royalty free or if you've been paid. For the ones that I've used in the past, I've paid maybe anything between $12, $14, $15 as a one-off, or you can subscribe to them. An important thing when you format, and I found with this, is the script. And as I've now moved into my 5th podcast, I now have a script ready, and that certainly helps a lot, particularly if you're going to do videos And I don't have a script in front of me in case you think I do. But if I did, I'd be reading, you'd follow my eyes. So it's good actually if you have it, if you have your script, and your script then could be on the screen, but that's a bit more into video marketing. But a script is very good. At least when you're interviewing your guests, have the questions and have bullet points ready. And I would always do that as well. In terms of the equipment then, okay, you've got to start to think about what equipment am I going to use. And I will come on to that, what kind of microphones am I going to do the podcast from a desktop. From what I'm talking to you at the moment is in front of an iMac. I have another, my laptop over to the left. Many people would have 2 or 3 different screens. And you've got to think about editing. What software am I going to use? Those are big questions. How am I going to edit my podcasts? Am I going to use Audacity or Adobe Audition or GarageBand or Anchor or Altitude? And then who's going to host my podcast? And the ones that I use is Anchor at the moment, but I've used also Buzzsprout, Captivate and Transistor as well, are 2 other hosting platforms. And then the big question in red over the left there is you've got to think about when you're starting publishing it. And again, Anchor and Buzzsprout and Headliner app. And then you've got to think about all your social channels. And I've put also a blog, your own website and a blog. And then you have to, don't forget about YouTube because it's very significant. And I found lately that my YouTube has actually driven a bit of traffic to my site. So, it isn't going to, that brings us round full circle. It isn't going to happen. Your own podcast isn't going to happen overnight. And you have to sit and think about, why am I doing this? But podcasting, I'll come full circle on that. Podcasting is great fun. So here's what I've called, I'll come back to this slide 2 or 3 times in this presentation this morning. And I've called this your first podcast roadmap, and I'm going to walk through that just now, and then I'll give a quick demonstration. So number 1, the very first thing you've got to think about is recording your content. Now you can start with this device, and this device is it's an iPhone. It can be any kind of a phone, doesn't have to be an iPhone. Even from an iPhone 6 you could be recording your own podcast. So you can start with a phone. On most phones there will be a voice recording app. And I've used the voice recording app on this. You can have a clip mic, and I'll have a picture of a clip mic that I'll show you shortly. You might want to record on a MacBook or on a laptop. You can do it over Zoom or over Teams for that matter. The important thing is you need to save them as a .wav file. You then move into number 2, you're bringing it into an editing suite. That's your second step. So you have it recorded, you bring it into an editing suite. Audacity, Adobe Audition, are the 2 that I've used. There are lots of others as well. Then you're going to edit it, and there's a lot to this, but the ones to summarize are the cut tool and the move tool, and then the enhance tool, where you're arranging the tracks. And then you export it. And the one thing I've highlighted on the roadmap here is you need to export it at what's called a multi-track file, certainly a multi-track mixdown file. If you're using Adobe Audition, you need to do that. And there's similar formats that you need to think about if you were using Audacity. And then you're really into post-produce. So you're going to have to amend it. You have the file, you've exported it, but you want to make further changes to it or additions to it in terms of sound quality. And I use a piece of software called Aphonic, which I'll show you. That's number 5. And then number 6 is, I suppose, distribute and promote, where you're uploading it to Anchor or to Buzzsprout or to the Headliner app. And then really after that, you'd be some follow-up. You'd be thinking about other follow-up strategies and tools. So step 1, podcasting, go, what do you need? Well, from left to right, I've said a phone. The second, Aisling, can you see my mouse here? Just give me a wee thumbs up if you can or not. No? Okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna pen color. Bear with me a wee second to get my laser pointer. Hopefully you can see my laser pointer there. So what do you need? Well, on the phone there's that's an old iPhone, but any type of phone, you get the voice recorder up. There's your clip mic. I have 2 of these. I go for the Rode mics, and they just simply clip in your phone. If it's anything beyond an iPhone 6, which it probably is, then you use a jack with 2, which costs about £10. And then you're up and running. Clip mics, the quality is very, very good as to begin with. What I'm doing now, if you can see me, is the clip mic would sit there, and I wear a dark shirt if I was doing it. This is a navy shirt. I would probably wear a black shirt, so you don't really see the mic if I was interviewing somebody here. So I could have somebody socially distanced still a meter, was it 2 meters or a meter apart, but the leads will go that far, and we could be recording with clip mics in here, just with my phone and on this holder here, and that could be done quite easily. The big thing to be aware of, that's done through this app here, which is the Voice Recorder Pro app. Now, journalists use this app, producers use this app as well. It is free and it's on the App Store, but it's also the equivalent of this on Android as well. So if you're recording in your home office, that's slightly different. You know, if you're moving on up and you're getting into podcasting, I use the one on the left, which is a Yeti. It's called a Blue Yeti. I have mine for a couple of years. That's what I'm talking to you this morning on. The one on the right, I also have a condenser mic, but I haven't got it linked up. The difference in the two is I'm talking to you now on, I'm not moving position, but I am going to stand. And if I move around, which if you were in a recording studio, you would have a condenser mic, which would capture the sound much better. And really, it's kind of depends on your format. A lot of podcasters like to be standing when they're podcasting, and so they would they'd be using a condenser mic. In the picture to the right, you'll see that to begin with, yes, there's a wee bit of investment here, but it's not, you know, to start with, it's not too expensive to get into podcasting. The pop filter is very handy. I have a couple of these, and there's one that I use from the other microphone. They're about £7 or £8 maybe. And really what that is when there's that sound in the editing, that'll help cut that out. Obviously you need to have it. While I'm just on tools, I don't have a mixing desk, but this is Brian would know this. This is a very good set of headsets that my brother, who's into music, gave me. And this, if you had a mixing desk, which is a bit later, you'll be wearing the headphones. And that's slightly more advanced into podcasting, but you will see podcasters always on with good set of quality headphones. And that's really so you can mix or balance if you're in a 2 or 3-way conversation. You don't need that to begin with, but certainly it's as you get into podcasting and you maybe start to think about a mixing desk, the headphones will come into play. So you can record on Zoom or Microsoft Teams. I've talked about the mics and with the pop shield. You know, many of my Tomorrow's Visitors ones have been done on Zoom. Actually, one was done on Teams, but the other 4 were done on Zoom. Word of recommendation for you here: if you're doing this, save your file, your audio file. Make sure you save that to save it locally, and don't save it to the cloud, because the sound quality is much superior. So back to the roadmap again. So you've recorded the content, you've done that on step 1. You've now got to think about bringing it into step 2. So step 2 and step 3, you bring it into an editing suite. Now I use Adobe Audition. Again, we could spend 2 or 3 hours on Adobe Audition alone. Adobe Audition is part of the Adobe Suite. If you subscribe to Adobe Suite, you know, you will get that. If to subscribe alone, you're probably working out of it between $10.99 a month for this, maybe as a one-off package. But I would, depending on what your business is, you may think about the Adobe Suite. To be honest with you, I found it very intuitive. There's a bit of learning with it, but the Adobe Audition is the recommendation that I'd be going with. There are lots of others out there, but it does a lot. So what I found, this is my way of doing things. I really line out 7 tracks. And the first one is going to be the introduction to the podcast. That's a standard intro. So, hi, welcome to Brian's podcast. In this podcast, we're all about more is less, or we're going to talk to you about recommendations for science and technology, etc. That's a standard that goes out. There's going to be music that accompanies that. Now, very often what people do is they combine 1 and 2. But for today's purposes, I've separated these out. So you've got the first file, which is 30 to 45 seconds. That's going to be your standard intro file. You can change that, and you're going to have your music. Why I separate them is, suppose sometimes you might decide to change that. In terms of music, I made some reference earlier on the story blocks that I've more recently used, but Ben Sounds is very good as well. And also the SoundCloud and the YouTube audio library. So you have your intro, number 2, you have your music. Number 3 is intro to your very, very first episode. Now, this is a format that I subscribe to, and I've listened to a lot of podcasts. You don't have to use this, but this track, 7 tracks, works for me. So number 3 is, so today I'm in conversation with Sarah. Sarah works at SRC. Sarah's going to tell us about why she listens to podcasts. Well, you're going to have some fantastic insight to this. Sarah really goes into something very, very interesting. You must listen to this, etc., etc. So that's the introduction to what's coming up. So you're warming your audience up. Some people say, well, Kieran, just get straight to it. But because people are going to be on the go, they're going to come back to that. So you've got to give them a reason. If they say it's 30 minutes, what is coming up that's going to be of interest for them to listen? So give them a little flavor, entice them in, incentivize them in. And in terms of, some podcasters commercialize their podcast, and here's an opportunity to do this. Just word of caution with that. You then have your main interview, which is going to be 25 to 30 minutes. When you get beyond 30 minutes, and I have done, and some of mine, I may contradict myself here, are slightly longer than that, but really needs to be good. And I can't see my colleague Sarah, who is an avid listener of my recent podcast, but it needs to be good if you're going to hold your audience for 35 minutes or 40 minutes, the content. Certainly no longer, definitely no longer than that. Now, when you've done that, and then you will say, okay, well, thanks a million for listening to today's podcast. Number 5. The summary is, what did you actually talk about in the main interview? What were the key salient points? And your summary of episode is also a way of pointing people what's coming up. So on episode 2, then, you've heard today from Sarah, you've heard from Brian, but next week you're going to hear from Amy. Well, Amy's going to give you such insight. And then in episode 3, Margaret's going to talk about something else. So you're enticing your audience to come back. One thing I should have said is, very often when people release their podcasts, they do it in bundles of 3. And this is probably good practice. With hindsight, I wish I had done that. I just released mine with my first one on its own, and then I followed up another a month later. So, but bundles of 3 is a good idea, and as a listener now, I find that very, very useful. Okay, so you have the summary of the episode, and the number 6 step is the outro to the podcast, which is a standard outro. 1 and 6 are standard, so you record them, and that's what's going to be what people would call, your jingle or your intro or your outro. And then you have the music. Usually the music is the same music that you had for your intro music, and your outro music would be the same. All right, so that's my 7 steps. They can be condensed into 5, but this has definitely worked for me. So this is what your dashboard looks like in Adobe Audition now. This is the 2018 version. It's now 2020. What's highlighted in blue on the top left-hand corner there is a multi-track file. I'm now going to walk through in the next example, going to walk you through that, but you will see, I'll tell you what I like about this is the different colors. Each color represents a different file. So that's the intro, that's the Ben Sounds music, that's my standard introduction, number 3, that's number 4, the main interview, that's number 5, a summary of the interview, that's number 6, a standard outro, and that's number 7, the Ben Sounds file, the standard file. So there's my 7 files there. Now I have just a short little video that I'm going to play, if you can bear with me. Hi everyone, I just wanted to go quickly through Adobe Audition. So this is a screen that you're seeing here is the Adobe Audition CC 2018. So this tracks that you see in front of you are Brack Tours Travel podcast. With Colin Murphy and the staff, Peter and Nuala from Brack Tours. And what we've done here is brought the file into Adobe Audition. So in this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different tracks. In the document that in the PowerPoint that I've been talking about is I think I have outlined about 8 or 9 different tracks. So really just to quickly explain what happens is you've recorded it, your file, your main interview file, which is here. and there are 2 pieces of content. There's a main interview that Colin has done with the members of staff about the history of BRAC Tours, and then here is an interview with me, and I'm interviewing the team really about why they're using podcasting and where the company's going. So very quickly then, you'll see up at here, there's 2 options. You have a waveform or a multi-track. When you're setting up a podcast, you come into multi-track. I'm not going to give you a detailed lesson here on Adobe Audition because that takes too long, but I found this very useful and pretty good to follow. There's lots of online learning materials as well. But so quickly, you bring your track in here, and the very first one is Introduction with Music, which Colin has recorded. I'll try and play that now. Beg your pardon. So there we go there. Hopefully you can hear that if I turn the volume up a wee bit. You can't hear that now. You will hear that in a wee second.
Scotland and Ireland, and hearing some great stories from the team at BRAC Tours and many guests.
So that's the first file there.
Also
So
find out more how BRAC Tours can make your vacation one you'll never forget.
File. He's used a microphone, like a condenser mic, to do that, and then he's brought
Hello and welcome to our first podcast show.
So now
Here
we're
we talk
rolling
with
on
Peter
to
and Nuala on how the
that's
company
track 2
was
here.
started,
It's an
what we
introduction to
offer.
the episode.
Then we're later joined by Kieran Swill from the Southern Regional College in Uri for a chat of why we decided to start a podcast and lots more.
Beg your pardon, that was my fault. Anyway, we got the gist of that, and we got the gist there. So you have 7. In that particular example, you have 5 different tracks, and really, another thing I'd like to highlight with you here, again, for all the tourism businesses, I used Loom, which I know Brian has used, my colleague Brian and I have used as well. And Loom is a screen recording tool. It's on the Google Chrome browser. Very useful. That little picture of me in the left, you can make that bigger or smaller, and you can move that around your desktop. So I guess that's an aside, but also very useful for explaining. If you were a tourism business and you had a map, you could use Loom to explain things. Very handy. So what's happened now is you have the files, you then have exported them as a multi-track. Your next step then is you're going to have to make additions to that and change that. Now, on Audacity and really within Adobe Audition, you have what's called Equalizers, and it gets very technical. So I have my friend Wayne Denner to thank for this. Wayne showed me a piece of software called Ophonic, and this is free up to, you get a free up to 2 hours use, and then you can go, if you were doing a lot of podcasts, you would buy the license for it, you know. But it's certainly to start with very useful. So you've exported that file as a multi-track mixdown file, and you bring it, let's say you put it on your desktop. Well, then you bring it into Ophonic. You hit the new production there, and it takes about, depending on the size of the file, if it's, let's say, a 30-minute recording, it'll take about 3 or 4 minutes to do. And then you have your file balanced. And I don't know the ins and outs because I'm not a magician, but it sounds much better out the other end when you get that file. So you have that file, that's your step 5. And really then your step 6 is you've got to start thinking about how you're going to distribute this. And I guess really from an entry-level perspective, think about Anchor. It's not the only one, and it is free to begin with as well. And I've used it, and I've taken 3 or 4 of my clients through this. Anchor is owned by Spotify, as you see on the left-hand side. And actually, you can use Anchor to create your own, but the tools that I've shown you to date, certainly we're going through the theory and the practice of it, are probably better to begin with. So really what you're going to use Anchor for is to distribute your podcast. And Anchor will submit your podcast up to 7 different directories, including Spotify and Apple and Google and really Public and a few others. So it's definitely the very important step. And it's worked very well for me, Anchor. Another one that I'm thinking about moving on to is called Buzzsprout, and Buzzsprout is just it is a paid version. Again, it's about €10 or $10 a month. It's a bit more to it, but it's just the features are more advanced than Anchor would have. So I may well move on to Buzzsprout. Once you have, and no, I'm still at step 6. Once you have your file, now your last amendments, and you've made them, and your file's ready to go and be distributed, you can use an app called Headliner. I have used the Headliner app, and what Headliner creates something that are called audiograms. And again, I've Wayne to thank for this, for showing me this. So an audiogram is a summary of the main parts of your podcast. So this app will actually summarize, it will listen to the podcast and pull out parts of it, and it will promote it for you. Again, it's free to begin with, but there is a paid option, but it works very, very well. I've used Headliner, but then I've also more recently, because I've revamped my own website, I've used YouTube, and I've really sat back and thought about how am I promoting Tomorrow's Visitors. But in terms of getting up and running, the Headliner app, very, very useful piece of software. So I think I'm able to play this here as I'm talking to you about it. So on the right hand side there, no, beg your pardon, I'll not be able to play that. Well, that'll be in the notes, but that's what it's going to look like on your Headliner. That's an audiogram. It lasts for 48 seconds, and it's basically a summary of the of what you want to include. You can create, by the way, you can create your own little video within Headliner as well, and equally that works well. So this is what my Tomorrow's Visitors looks like on Anchor, and you have to think there's a lot in this slide here. Again, Cahill helped me come together with the art for this. That's Tomorrow's Visitors, and he was thinking about the Titanic. I don't know if that's going to be good or bad, but when you think about your art, what's your artwork going to look like? And because this is going to be your brand. So remember way back at the start when I was talking about your name, I didn't really talk a lot about your artwork. There's lots of software out there. In the past, I've used Canva to do art, but my advice was maybe if you don't do this yourself, is certainly talk to someone who does this. You don't have to spend too much, but you've got to think about, when you come to choosing your artwork, of is it aligned to your brand. So that's my anchor page. And I talked to you earlier about Travel with Brack Tours. Well, they are now on their 9th podcast, and Spotify has worked very, very well for them. And again, this is just what their page looks like. So you've got to think about creating your own anchor page and creating your own Spotify page. Post-production tips. So I guess I've been podcasting really for about a year now, and here's a couple of extra things that I picked up along the way. I'm an iPhone user, but you can also, in Google Drive has an app where you can upload the audio to Google Drive on your phone, and you can actually edit it on the go on the Google Drive. I've used the second one, number 2, the Edit Point app, and it's an iOS app. And what it allows you to do, so let's say I've interviewed somebody for an hour and there's a lot of hems and ha's and bits and buts. I can actually edit that on the go. As I'm listening to it on my walk, I can edit that on the go with the Edit Point app. So it's very, very useful. And one I know that, again, my colleague Brian has used in the past is the Dictate function in Microsoft Word. And it's the latest edition. That's absolutely brilliant. And Northern Ireland, you think, oh gosh, there wasn't too many changes. So when I'm thinking about my script, or maybe after the interview, instead of typing it all up, I just dictate it, and it's very, very useful. So not just about podcasting, but that's something. It's a little microphone button on Microsoft Word. It's worked very, very well for me. Now, it's only really of late, number 4, that I've started to use this, and this is called Buffer. And there is, again, free to begin with. All these things are free to begin with, but you really get into podcasting, if you're getting into it seriously, you'll find there's a wee bit of cost involved. I'm not going to pretend there's not. But Buffer is I use the word magic because really, if you have your episodes stacked up, so I have 5 done to date, but I have another 2, one recording tomorrow, and then another one next week, and then I have another 2 in the bank. And I know I can schedule with Buffer all my social posts around them. I'll show you my Tomorrow's Visitors site as well, how I do that. But Buffer is really, really good for scheduling for podcasts. Only lately, and I've Cahill to thank for this, I've come across a very useful app, and that's called Hemingway. and I'll give you a quick demonstration of that. And this has, how would I say, has radically changed how I write for the web. And it gives it color code. So let's say you have 200 words and you think it's good. I know I write colloquially, and that's not good because it doesn't make it easy to read. So what the Hemingway app will teach you over time is to construct your sentences correctly for the web. And it's really, really helpful, not just for writing, for communicating. Very, very useful piece of software in post-production that I would thoroughly recommend. These are just some of the links, and I made reference at the start that Brian was listening to some podcasts. We'll also include those. These will be with the presentation. I'm about to hand you over to my colleague, Margaret. Margaret's going to talk to you about some support. And I know there will be a few questions, and also we'll take them at the end. So if you can hang on for roughly about another 10 minutes, Margaret's going to talk to you. Then I'm going to come back, and I just want to show you some of the things on a WordPress site that I think would be useful if you're going to get into podcasting. Margaret, if it's okay, Margaret, I'm going to hand over to you at this stage. I'm just waiting for Margaret, hopefully, to come in. Margaret, are you there? Maybe she's got difficulty. Brian, I can just see you. I can just see you, Brian, at the moment.
Hi, Kieran.
Oh, great, Margaret. Lovely. Margaret, would you mind just telling the audience a little bit about, maybe a bit more about the hats, Margaret, and of where we are with it and where we might be going, and then a little bit about further support that we could offer at Southern Region College?
I will indeed, Kieran. First and foremost, I want to say thank you. Okay, it was really insightful, the presentation, and it really made podcasting much more tangible for all the beginners out there, just to see it step by step, simplified by yourself. Really well done.
Thank you.
So I'm going to say on behalf of the HATS program, this is actually the last webinar in the series of the HATS program, and it was a recovery package for the hospitality and tourism program. And where we're going with it is that we're actually, between the 6 colleges, we're actually following on with a recovery program for the retail sector, and it has yet to be shaped, but that will be, I suppose, in the pipeline, okay, in the very near future. But just in the midst, when everybody's thinking about getting back to business, and perhaps they're recruiting people or they want to upskill who they have to make them more flexible, the Department for the Economy has the Skills Focus Programme, and it's for businesses in Northern Ireland and social enterprises with less than 150 or 250 employees. And it's fully funded for non-mandatory accredited training. And then we have the Innovate Us programme, which Kieran and Brian will be stalwarts on. It's a fully funded mentoring programme offering up to 30 to 60 hours mentoring for an innovation activity. So if you have something that is a new product or process to your business and you have under 50 employees, please contact us, and it's fully funded again by DFE. There's innovation vouchers, and these aim to help small enterprises tap into knowledge and expertise available within the college to develop innovative solutions with businesses funded, and it's funded by InvestNI. Now, there's the Fusion programme and the KTP, that's the knowledge transfer programme for businesses of different sizes and businesses all over the island of Ireland. We also have higher level apprenticeship opportunities, a myriad of those in all sorts of different areas. If you know any school leavers looking for different alternative routes. We really have a whole wide range of support. So if you have any ideas on a training need, contact us, okay, on betterbusiness@src.ac.uk. Today's program, we would really appreciate if you would take the time to do an evaluation. You will get an evaluation email. We'd really take the time if you could do it, because that would mean that we can kind of shape what we do in the future of what we want to do better, and any other areas you would like to see. And we appreciate all feedback. And that's me.
That's great, Margaret. Aisling, could you tell me, have I stopped sharing the PowerPoint? I have. Can I go to my screen now? Yeah. Do I need to do anything to do that? No, I'm okay. Okay. So if I just minimize that. So I now just want to, just very, very quickly, thanks a million, Margaret, for that. just in terms of, this is the site that again, my colleague Cahill helped me set up. So this is quite a simple site really, but it's done on WordPress. I suppose if I just click in the most latest one, there's my episodes. In terms of my social channels, I've got Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Spotify that I use. But in terms of the latest episodes, if I go to, let's see, episode number 5 with Colin Neal from the Trust. So we've took a bit of time to set up this website, and this is a banner that we use. So these are pictures. These are, if you haven't been, the Colin Glen Trust is opening a new, 3 new attractions actually. So you can see this like toboggan run here. It'll be opening really probably July at this stage, but they also have a number of other facilities. They're going to have a zip wire facility there as well. I'm showing you that because in this here, I'm able to, this is a YouTube video that Colin, I'm not going to play all of it, but this is, I'm able to put a
Colin, good afternoon.
And
hey Kieran, how are you?
That
I'm good.
Colin, thanks a million. Kieran's wheel here, tomorrow's visitors. Thanks. Very, very useful facility. That's enough for me on that one. But in terms of the site, I've used the text here through the Hemingway app. Has really, really helped me in this. And I've broken it all up. So every episode that you do, when I said to you from the outset, there's a lot more to podcasting. You've got to think of your episode notes. And this, folks, is where it's really going to help you. So you don't need a separate website. So many of you listening to this will have your own websites. You do need separate pages. Or you can create your own website. This was done on WordPress. But the notes are going to be very important because this reads very well on a phone. And a lot of people are going to be listening to podcasts from their phone. So, you know, they're looking at the notes and they think, oh, here's all the resources. What's on offer, recent developments. So, you know, people would call this a blog or a separate web page, but it works very, very well. Now, I made reference earlier on at the number 5 was the Hemingway app. So there's it there, if you can see that okay. Hemingway app makes you write your writing bold and clear. And I am a supporter of Visit Britain, but I want to do something just to highlight. So yellow means 1 of 11 sentences hard to read. Red means 1 of 11 sentences very hard to read. So you've got a thing, some people wonder, why is my text not being read? Why does nobody read my website? Why does nobody read my blog? It's because it's you're using too many sentences, too much description. You're not breaking it up and making it easy. So I've just put in the Visit Britain site. I've highlighted this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to bring that into Hemingway and do a little exercise. So over that, I'm going to paste that. And now, so this is, you know, from Visit Britain. You would think, wow, they wouldn't. But look at that. So there I have 2 out of the 12 sentences are very hard to read. 1 of the 12 sentences is hard to read. So you've got this, what you're looking at is obviously when you have your blog for your podcast, you don't want too many yellows, you don't want any reds. So what I've had to learn is construct in shorter sentences and writing for the web. So I wanted to take a wee bit of time to just show you that. I suppose I'm also using this opportunity to get you to have a look at tomorrow's visitors and the way I've set it up. There's a little bit about me, about the author, about me, and my next episode will be coming up soon. So I think really that's, Aisling, in terms of what I wanted to say, that's probably enough from me at this moment in time. And just to thank everyone, Aisling, for taking part. So that would be Aisling, Amy, Margaret, Sarah, and Brian. Thank you very much for everyone for listening. Have we any questions, Aisling?
Yes, Kieran, there's just one in at the minute. It's a lady called Nikki, just wondering, is there any further help available for podcasting for her business?
Yep. Yes, more than happy to help Nikki. Did she tell us what type of business she has?
No, I'm assuming she's registered, so we'll probably be able to work out who she is from the registrations. Nikki, if you want to drop us an email on betterbusiness@src.ac.uk, we can follow up with you after this, if that's okay.
Yeah. By all means, Nikki, I'm sure we can. We've helped between Brian and my colleague Brian. I've helped 2 businesses together with podcasting, and then I've helped an additional 3 so far. So in the last 12 months. So we'll be delighted to help you. There is a commitment to getting into podcasting, but I believe the rewards are many. So once again, I think I've talked enough for today. Thank you very, very much, everyone, and look forward to hearing from you soon. Thank you.